Richard Buell. Richard Buell, yeah. I can't describe Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell as a pedophile rapist because, to my knowledge, his victims were not younger than 16 years old at the time that the rapes began. You know, it's possible, maybe a little bit younger. You know, it's possible, maybe. It's even possible that there were much younger, but that I just don't know about. But in terms of the victims I know about, the age, the youngest age that is provided in publicly available sources that are available on the internet is 16. So, and the rapes continued for years. In one case, it looks like one of the victims was raped repeatedly from the time she was around 16 years old, possibly a little bit younger, right through until her early 20s when she finally ran away. Essentially a sex slave of Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell. His victims were teenage Tibetan refugees who he lured away from their families in India with promises of a better life in America. Good day, sir. And had a little chat with that guy last week, if I remember correctly. And anyhow, you know, that's essentially what happened. Is Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell of the Northborough and Westborough Unitarian Universalist churches in Massachusetts, because he actually was a minister of two Massachusetts Unitarian Universalist churches, you know, went to India in the guise of a savior, as it were, and convinced the parents, no doubt, of these teenage Tibetan refugees that if he gave their children into his care, that he would ensure that, you know, they were well taken care of, they got an education. He might have even promised that he would get them American citizenship. You know, who knows what he actually promised in detail, but there's no question that he essentially conned the parents into giving him custody of their children on the pretext of protecting them, and then proceeded to make sex slaves out of them. And at least in one case, this sex slavery was spread over at least 4 or 5 years. So yeah, that's Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell for you. But as I said, Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell and Richard Buell are by no means the only Unitarian Universalists who are guilty of such despicable crimes. We got a police van coming this way. We'll see if anything comes of that. Just pick up my freestanding picket sign here. So, Intervention, Sergeant Peloton, 72.9. So this is a SPVM, essentially riot cops. So I have a feeling the riot squad's not required this morning. So I have a feeling it's just driving by, really has nothing to do with this protest here, but you never know. You never know. Maybe one day the Unitarians may persuade the SPVM to send in the riot squad to put down my protest in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal. They've certainly tried other ludicrous things in the past, so I wouldn't put it past Montreal Unitarians to at least put in a request for the riot squad at some point. Anyhow, we do like to have a little bit of fun with this. So I actually know quite a lot of the guys in the riot squad because, I mean, I don't know them as close personal friends, but, you know, they know my face and I know their faces, and we basically get along quite well because I document not just this protest, but various other protests. And I also ask questions about SPVM police repression of peaceful public protest at Montreal City Council meetings. In fact, I intend to ask another question about SPVM police repression of peaceful public protest at the next City Council meeting, which is tomorrow night. The Groupe Intervention, also known as the Riot Squad, are the police who handle security at Montreal City Council meetings. So, you know, when I come in to ask a question about SPVM police repression of peaceful public protest or various other issues, it's not always about SPVM police repression. I do ask questions about other issues. You know, the Groupe Intervention police officers are the ones who check my bags and run a metal detector over me and this kind of thing. It's not just me, they do it to everyone. This is a fairly high level security as a result of a couple of terrorist attacks some years ago in which some people were killed, unfortunately, by basically people who were acting on behalf of Islamist extremism. So after shooting in Ottawa at the Parliament buildings, and after a Quebec soldier was run down by someone in Saint-Jean-de-Richelieu, they significantly increased security at Montreal City Hall. They've never really decreased it since then, not so far anyway. And so, you know, I basically see the Groupe Intervention officers, and they see me, and they see my questions, because, you know, some of them are down at the entrance, you know, basically protecting the entrance, but others are up in the hall d'honneur watching the proceedings on the big screen, you know. So when I ask a question about SPVM police repression, at least a handful of SPVM riot cops, you know, hear the question that I'm asking and hear the response I get to it and so on. So I'm pretty well known to the SPVM Groupe Intervention. And like I said, I've never personally had any serious problem with them. There was only one incident where a SPVM Groupe Intervention, a police officer who seemed to have anger management issues, got somewhat hot under the collar with me and behaved very stupidly. And of course, there's video of that on YouTube. Just search for SPVM Bobo Cop. But nonetheless, what I'm getting at is other than that single incident, I've never been physically attacked by an SPVM riot cop so far, even though I'm, you know, very present at a lot of Montreal protests. And there's certainly been some situations that I've been in where, you know, an SPVM riot cop, you know, could have run into me and knocked me down or hit me with a baton or pepper sprayed me or whatever. But so far it's never happened. And I think it's partly because they know more or less who I am. And I think to some extent they actually respect what I'm doing. You know, like, I'm not making them out to be monsters. I'm just complaining about behavior that, you know, some of them might actually wish that they didn't have to do, kind of thing. You know, there's definitely been excessive police repression of peaceful public protest in Montreal in the last decade or so. Certainly between 2012 and 2015. So I think a bit earlier. You know, my own feeling is that the heavy police intervention that ended Occupy Montreal was totally unnecessary. Could have been completely avoided. The night before the SPVM moved in on Occupy Montreal and dismantled it, the members of, members is maybe not the right word, but the participants in Project, I get a little Freudian slip there, Occupy Montreal, not Project Montreal. The participants in Project Montreal had actually voted the night before that they would voluntarily leave Square Victoria. They would take everything down and clean up, and they would leave voluntarily over the next few days. I think this was a Thursday night or a Friday night. I think it was a Thursday night, and the police came in on a Friday, if I remember, but I might have that wrong. But nonetheless, essentially what happened is, the people who were participating in Occupy Montreal all voted, or at least the ones who voted. I mean, there was maybe not everyone voted, but pretty well unanimously, the participants said, okay, we've made our point, we've done what we can do, and so now we're prepared to peacefully leave and end our protest and clean up, the Square Victoria, totally voluntarily. There would have been no need for any kind of police intervention at all if that had been allowed to happen. But unfortunately, even though I do believe this was clearly communicated to the leadership of the SPVM, nonetheless, they felt it necessary to come in the next day in large numbers and clear everyone out of Square Victoria and basically dismantle the tents and so on, and basically make a big mess that they didn't have to make. So to me, that was completely unnecessary police intervention that could have been totally avoided if the SPVM had simply allowed Occupy Montreal participants to leave voluntarily over a few more days. Looks like we're almost out of time here. I'm glad I was able to get that all recorded. But that's my little history of as far as I'm concerned, an almost totally unnecessary, heavy SPVM intervention that shut down Occupy Montreal in the fall of 2011. That's it for now.